We should do this in honor of Gedalia's having that surgery tomorrow.
Okay, welcome everyone. As we are sponsored over here by A.B. Spry for Nachas from children and grandchildren, by Shalom Fogel, Lila Nishmas Yaakov Zev ben Yehuda Aryeh, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tzivya Miriam Bas Gad, and Yosef ben Sion ben Yaakov Zev, by Baruch Ian, Lila Nishmas Yaakov Chaim and Abba, Esther Bas Gittel, Avram ben Shmuel HaKain, Yaakov Yemansky, Udakar Satov to the Rav, Zoom family, and Nachas from children and grandchildren, by Ed Salah from London, and Joshua Rosenberg, a virtual Talmud. As we just heard from Michal Avram, our Chaver Adaf, Gedalia Engel, is going in for some skin surgery tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And that's, it's an ordeal because they take off one layer, then they take off another layer, and they see how many layers they have to take off. So we have him in mind that he should be okay. Gedalia Baruch ben Chava Brindel. Gedalia Baruch ben Chava Brindel at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Please have him in mind. What a great guy he is, and what an integral part of the Agudas Yisrael of Fairways he is. Also, on a very happy note, I have to share with the Olam that a few hours ago, my baby, my youngest daughter Yocheved, had a healthy baby boy. Mazel tov to Avi and Yocheved Ingber on the birth of a baby boy. That's why tonight, thank you, Mazel Tov to Saba and my mother on the birth of another Einikel, and that's why I already did the Mishnah Yomis earlier, not because we have any extra shir tonight, but because I want to go visit in the hospital. I don't want to go there too late. And we begin as we welcome in Rich Leonard on the way to a chasana. And Mrs. Leonard, how are you? And Yisrael Fisher in Brooklyn, Dr. Guy, Saba, Irving Fishbound, Dr. Black, Stephen Holtzman, Yitzi Fuchs, Menachem Yemansky, Nachman Chapler, Shalom Fogel, who we've been missing, Yitzi Muller, A.B. Spry, Rabbi Kranz, Barish Gesserman, Mark Frankel, Aaron Swade, Avram Rezepkowitz, Naftali Jablin. Here in the shul, we have the pleasure of having Ruvain Shanit and Baruch Ian. What a pleasure. We have Avram Schenkman, which is really great to have. Welcome. Is he there? Yeah, Avram. Welcome, Avram. Michal Avram, Chaim Kramer. It's good to have everybody here. So, Amar Ameimer. Hilchasa, the law is, if I want to sell to Baruch a note, I have a note that Chatz owes me $100,000. I'm having a hard time to collect. So Baruch says, don't worry, I'll buy the paper. I sell it to him for $50,000. How does he acquire that note? So Amar Ameimer Hilchas, so the law is, Ice notes are niknas b'mesira. They're acquired by me handing it over to him, Karebi. In other words, it's not done through a document where I write a document that he acquires the lien of this paper, but rather he acquires it when I hand it over to him. Amalei Ravashi Lameimer, so Ravashi asks Ameimer, how did you arrive at this psak? Gemara, is it a tradition that you had from your Rebbeim? Oy Svara, or is it through a logical conclusion? Did you derive it through logic? Amalei Gemara. So he says, no, this is a tradition that I had from my Rebbe, who got it from his Rebbe. Ravashi, so Ravashi says, okay, I respect that, but I will tell you that Svara Namihu, it's also logical that you should acquire a note through a physical act of acquisition and not just through a document. Why? As we welcome in Marshall Castle and Ruvain Pollack just coming and joining us, and Naftali Jablin. It's great to have everybody here. says the Gemara, Amar Rav Ashi, Svara Namihu. It's also logical. Why? The paper that I'm selling to Baruch is words. And words are not acquired with other words. You have to do a physical act of acquisition. Says Gemara V'lai, you can't acquire a star without a physical act of acquisition. V'amar Rabba Bar Yitzchak Amar Rav. Rabba Bar Yitzchak said in the name of Rav, Shnei shtaros saying, there's two types of documents. Now here's a situation where Mark wants to transfer a piece of real estate to Ruvain Pollack. Now Mark is in Bela Kinwood, and Ruvain Pollack is in Staten Island. So Mark goes to Shalom and Yitzi, two very reputable people, and he says, I want you to be Zaycha in this real estate, in this karka, on behalf of Ruvain Pollack. Remember, you could do that. Zachan Adam Shaloi Befana. So Yitzi pulls out a handkerchief, and they make a Kinyan Suder, and he hands over the handkerchief, and in lieu of that, Shalom and Yitzi acquire the field on behalf of Ruvain. Then Mark says, and also write him a document, a deed of sale. Write him a document attesting that he owns the property. So says the Gemara, Zochu b'sada leplaini. If he tells Yitzi and Shalom to be Zoicha in this field for Ruvain, v'kosvu lo yasashtar, and write for him a document. Now remember, that document is really detrimental for Mark, because it shows that he's more land poor. And a person that's land poor, people don't want to give credit to. So if he told them, again, Zachu b'sada leplaini, be Zaycha in the field for Ruvain, v'kosvu lo yasashtar, and write for him a document testifying to that he owns the land, chayzer b'shtar, he could retract until the shtar is delivered to Ruvain. He could retract the shtar, but he can't retract the giving of the field, because as soon as Yitzi made the Kinyan Suder, he was already Zaycha in it for Ruvain automatically, so Mark can't get the field back. However, the second shtar is, if Mark has a little cunning, with that sweet little face of his, he could be sometimes cunning. He says, be Zoiche in the field for Ruvain on the condition that we write for him a shtar, since he could back out of the shtar, and he made the acquisition contingent on the shtar, so he could back out of both. He therefore could retract both in the field and in the sada. Pretty clever of you, Mark. Right? Because Mark made it contingent on the shtar, and the shtar, until it's delivered to Ruvain, he could back out, and once he backs out in the shtar, he could back out on the giving of the field. Says the Gemara, Reb Chia bar Avin Amar Rav Huna. Reb Chia bar Avin says the name Rav Huna, Shloisha shtaros. I'll give you 3 examples of shtaros. Trei Hada Amran, 2 that we mentioned. Now, of course, there's thousands of examples of shtaros, but this was one collection of ideas about documents. He says, Trei Hada Amran, 2 that we've mentioned. Idach, let's say Mark needed some cash, and therefore he was looking for a buyer for his field. And anticipating that if he gets a buyer, the buyer will only do it if he has a deed of sale ready. So he prepared the deed of sale ahead of time. Idach im kodam machar v'kosev es hashtar. If Mark already prepared the shtar, now could you do that before the sale was made? So the Gemara says, as we turn to Amid Beis, ke'oisa sheshaninu, like we've learned, kaisvin shtar l'moicher, you could write a deed of sale to the seller. Afal pisha ein lo keach, you could write a deed of sale for the seller. Afal pisha ein lo keach imay, even though the buyer is not with him, because it's only a benefit for the buyer. Now, kevan shehir zigzeh bekarka, once Ruvain makes an improvement in the karka, remember that's one of the ways to be kaina karka. Karka is kaina with chazaka. Once he makes an improvement, let's say he puts a lock on the property, he makes a fence, he makes an opening, then nikne shtar b'kol makom shehu. He acquires the deed of sale that was already prepared wherever it is, because that's the kinyan of agav. Remember I told you, if let's say Marshall wanted to buy for me 100 bowling balls, but he didn't feel like making Mashiach on all 100 bowling balls. He has a little bit of the sluggy in him. So, he doesn't really feel like holding 100 bowling balls. I could rent him a small piece of karka, and agav the karka, he acquires the 100 bowling balls. And I told you that's one of the many kinyonim that I make with the guy on Pesach, right? I rent him a room in my house, and agav that room in the house, he acquires all the chametz that I'm delegated to sell. That's one of the 6 kinyonim that I make with the guy. So I rent him actually a room in the house, and agav that room, he acquires all of the chametz. Now,
what's the purpose of the shtar?
What?
The shtar. What's the purpose of his kinyan for the shtar? The shtar is supposed to be, isn't the shtar supposed to be the kinyan in itself?
No, in this case he wasn't transferring the real estate with the shtar. This is only a shtar raya, not a shtar kinyan.
Oh.
But he still needs to acquire it, because the seller might not want there to be a shtar. So the Gemara says, "V'zui sheshaninu nechasim she'ein lahem achrayis," movable property, niknin im nechasim she'esh lahem achrayis, is acquired automatically along with the transfer of real estate, b'kesav b'shtar v'chazaka. Whether you're acquiring the real estate with money, shtar, or making an improvement. So the Gemara says over here it seems to be that you're acquiring a shtar without any physical acquisition, because there was no physical acquisition made on the shtar. It's only acquired automatically through the kinyan on the karka. So you're not making any, but you said that Mile needs a physical acquisition. Says Gemara, no, agav shani. The mechanics of agav is different. Obviously it's different. Obviously, the mechanics of agav is we apply the physical acquisition of improving the karka also to the bowling balls, also to that which is secondary to it. What's the proof that agav is a very special kinyan? Daha madbeya, money, coins. They can't be acquired. This is a special din about money. Money can't be acquired with a suda. Let's say I'm transferring to you 10,000 quarters, and I want to give it to you, and you say, okay, here's my handkerchief. In lieu of this handkerchief, I get the 10,000 quarters. You can't do that. It's a special din that coins cannot be acquired through a kinyan suda. but they can be acquired through agav. Says the Gemara, the hamatbeya doloi niknei bel chalipin, the agav ara niknei. It can be transferred through real estate, because the Gemara says this Gemara we already had several times in our travels through Shas. Ki hodra papa havale treifser alfei zuzei beichuzai. Rapapa was owed $12,000 by Beichuzai. Now, what was happening is Rav Shmuel Bar Acha was traveling to Beichuzai. But Rapapa knew that the Beichuzai would not give it to an agent. Because then if they gave it to an agent and something happened along the way, they would still be responsible. So therefore, Rav Papa had to transfer the debt to Rav Shmuel Bar Acha, and this way when Beichuzai paid it, all bets are off, because then they paid it to the owner. But how do you transfer him the $12,000 when it's not there? So what did he do? Akninu nihale Rav Shmuel Bar Acha agav asifa de beizeh. Rav Papa rented to Rav Shmuel Bar Acha the threshold of his house, and agav the threshold, he transferred him to the $12,000. So now, when the Beichuzai pay it, they're paying it to the owner. They're not responsible anymore. Kiyasa, when Rav Shmuel Bar Acha came back with his $12,000 that he was having a hard time to get back, nofik la'apei ad tovach. He went and he was so excited that he went out to greet him all the way to a place called Tavach. He went out of the way to thank him for recovering him all that money. So you see that although the matbeya is not acquired through Kinyan Sudar, it can be acquired through Kinyan Agav. So Agav is not a pushover Kinyan, and that's why Agav could also acquire a shtar. But Milei, like Niknei b'Milei. Now the Mishnah says, when you sell a boat, you don't sell the servants, not the leather sacks that hold the cargo. Now antike is a strange word. What does that mean? My antike, what does that mean? The merchandise in the boat, when you sell the boat, you don't sell the merchandise with the boat. If you say kol ma'asher b'soicha, however, then you sell the merchandise. Now, what about, here we have a situation that Mark is into all businesses. You think he's only into boats? He's into all businesses. Mocher es hakroin. If Mark sells to Marshall a wagon, loy mocher es hapredos. He doesn't sell with it the mules. Mocher es hapredos. If he sells mules, loy mocher es hakroin. He doesn't sell with it the wagon. Mocher es hatzemet. If he sells the yoke, loy mocher es haboker. He doesn't sell with it the cattle that are attached to the yoke. Mocher es haboker. If he sells the cattle, loy mocher es hatzemet. He doesn't sell the yoke. Rabbi Yehuda says hadomim moidian. You see, remember when we said when it comes to merchandise, when it comes to real estate, the price can never prove anything, because einoi no b'karkos. There's no overcharging for karka. So price, you can't say, well, for so much money it wouldn't only mean that one field, because by real estate there's no overcharging. So you can charge, sky's the limit even for one field. But here we're not dealing with real estate. So Rabbi Yehuda says that we could see whether he meant just the yoke equipment or also the oxen by the price. Rabbi Yehuda ma'adomim moidian. The money proves it. Ketzad amaloi mechor li tzimetcha. If he says, sell me your yoke, b'mosayim zuz, for 200 zuz. Now nobody buys a yoke for 200 zuz. Hadavar yedua she'ein atzemet b'mosayim zuz. And therefore it must include also the team of oxen. The Chachamim say, Ein Adamim Raya, the money is no proof. the Gemara is going to talk. Why did a Chacham say that the money is no proof? Is it because they say maybe he wanted to give him a gratuity, he wanted to give him extra money? Or is it because we say it's no proof, he overcharged him for a yoke? You're right. So then we say Bittul Mekach. We say it's a Mekach Tois, and the deal is voided. But not that you get the oxen. So we'll see that in the Gemara. The first thing we have to see is when the notorious businessman Mark is selling the wagon, is the mules attached to the wagon or not? So Tani Rav Tachlifa bar Marava Kamed Rabbi Avo, Mocher as Akroin, Mocher as Predas. That if you sell the wagon, you do sell the mules. Ayvanan loy mocher tanan. We learned you don't sell. Amalei Ismail, should I erase it? Amalei lo, titargem masnisa ba'adukim by. The brisa that says if Mark sells the wagon, he sells the mules. That's where the mules are attached to the wagon. Then he sells the mules. If the mules are not attached to the wagon, then he's not selling with it the mules. Mocher es hatzemed, if he sells the yoke, and that's no joke, Mocher es hatzemed, right? I knew Mark would. I see that Aryeh Perlman has Yortzeit tonight, and the Shama should have an Aliyah. Says the Gemara, I have so many screens open in front of me that I get messages from many different shuls while I'm saying the shir. Ruvain, do you know if it's Yortzeit for Carol or for his father? No, you don't know. Not sure. Okay. Yeah, I know. Don't worry, Marshall. I notice you. Don't worry. Anyway, now, no, he knows when I'm talking about oxen. He doesn't want me to forget him.
It's his father.
It's his father. Wonderful man, his father. Wonderful man, his father.
Hey, did Mark sell me a car without an engine too?
If he did, we'll clap. Now, speaking about Aryeh Perlman's father, his mother, Carol, had $1 from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And when Mim Libby took ill, she came over to the house and she gave it to Mim Libby. And Mim Libby used to keep it. And when Mim Libby passed away, I returned it back to her. I was glad I did that before she passed away. Wonderful people. The father's name is Harvey. I just remembered. Harvey and Carol. Wonderful people. Anyway, Mocher es hatzemed, loy mocher es haboker. If Mark sells the yoke, he doesn't sell the cattle. So the question is, heichi dummy, what's the case? If a yoke is called exclusively yoke, or bakar, and cattle is called cattle, pshita. Then obviously, if he said the yoke, he only sold the yoke. Pshita simda zavenle. He sold the yoke. Bakar loy zavenle. He didn't sell the cattle. The ella the karile nami lebakar tzimra. If the oxen is considered part of the yoke, it's all considered one package, then l'chayra, if he says, I'm selling the yoke, kulei zavanei. Says in Relate Tzricha, ba'asra the korelate tzimta. The norm is that they call the yoke a yoke, or the bakar. But the economy the korel bakar tzimta. There are people that when they say the yoke, they mean the whole apparatus with the team of oxen. So Rabbi Yehuda says, since some people call the whole package tzimda, and it's 200 zuz, which is much more than just for the equipment of the yoke itself. So adam in maidian. Rabbanan say no. Ain't adam in raya. Says the Gemara, but well, wait. If the money is not a proof, but still, Marshall could say, hey, I want to void the sale because you overcharged me. The ein adam im raya lahave bittul mekach. It should void the sale. So says the Gemara, v'chi tema bittul mekach l'rabbanon leslu. Maybe they don't hold of voiding the sale, even if the overcharging is more than a sixth. Says the Gemara, v'loi. But Tanan, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer. Now the Tanakama in the Mishnah in Bava Basra, which we learned, says that there's no Ainah by Karka and by Avodim. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Hamoicher Sefer Torah, if you sell a Sefer Torah, Behema or Margalius, an animal or a precious pearl, Ein Lam Ainah. There's also no overcharging. Why? Because the Sefer Torah is priceless. An animal, you might want to get a match for a peer, and this animal, since you gauge it has the same strength as the other animal, you might overpay a tremendous amount. And the same thing if you have one earring, you need a matching earring, you'll pay an exorbitant amount to get the matching gem. Ein lehem oinah. Amru loy, and the Rabbanan say loy amru ela es elu. The only time there's no oinah is by real estate and by avodim. Otherwise, there's oinah by everything else. So you see, the Rabbanan do hold bittul melkach. So it says the Gemara, my ein domim raya nami diktani. It just means that the money that Mark charged him does not mean that he was selling the oxen. He was only selling the yoke, but Einachanami, Marshall could say that it's a mekach tois. Everybody is saying, Elamai ain't dom and raya, nami diktani davi bittul mekach. It can't, Marshall can't claim to get the oxen. He only meant to sell him the yoke, and since the yoke is very overpriced, he could indeed claim that it's a mekach tois and void the sale. The Ibai is saying, Ki Omer Rabbanan Oino Biktel Mekach. Where do Rabbanan say overcharging if it's a sixth? Or if it's more than a sixth, it voids the sale. Bichdei Shadas Toya. That's in something that the buyer could be misled. But over here, the price of a yoke is 30 shkalim. And since Mark is charging 200 shkalim, that he knows Marshall was certainly not misled. And if he gave him the money, he gave it to him because he wanted to give him a gift. This Marshall wanted to give him a gift. But Eina Kanami, according to the Rabbanan, we don't say, since normally a yoke only means the yoke, we don't say that the price proves that he meant to sell him the team of oxen as well. Okay, Rabbi say tomorrow, remember that there is going to be a wonderful Chumash here in Yirtz Hashem after the daf at 8 o'clock. And I did the Mishnah Yomis already. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.
So this was the story of the Jewish used mule sales.
What's the name? Chaim Baruch ben? Oh, Zavel, right. Chaim Baruch ben Zavel is Neshama should have an aliyah.
Rabbi, I have a name on your side.
Yes?
Chayalei Bashraga Feivel.
Chayaleya?
Bashraga Feivel.
Bashraga Feivel, the Neshama should have a big aliyah.
Thank you, Rabbi. Mazel tov again.
Thank you, everyone.